assuming they are. Welcome to the session. Bob and I, we had talked about what we know, Elizabeth. We talked about doing the session because we've both been in industry and then made the jump to academia. We both have our stories. I'm sure you want to hear a bit about that, but going back and forth, straddling between industry and academia, what that's like, and what are some of the things that you have. This document has a lot of text, I'd say, but we also we purposely did that so you can access this. You know, you can go to the website, the career readiness website, and download this. So you can have all the bullet points. We just want to make sure that it's something that, as a leave behind, we'd be able to access and be helpful for you. So we'll start with that. A couple of things we want to do is we want to have it work. We're going to talk about working both ways. So what it's like working in industry, what you need to do to present yourself to get a job in industry, and then making that leap to academia, how you might take your skills in industry, apply that to academia, how that's useful for academia. We wanted to do some brief introductions around the room, just see which way people are leaning, how many people are wanting to go from finding a job in industry or looking for a job in academia. We'll just do that quickly. We'll have any opening questions, and then just some observations, practitioners, how to apply for academic positions, and then academics, how anthropological methods, how you can sell what you know as an anthropologist. Methods in theory can be applied to industry settings, what you can make relevant. And then we're going to have some breakout segments. You'll have you guys work together in small teams and crafting your approach. So then we'd like you to present your ideas. I think we'll try to squeeze in the time here and feedback from us. And then, I don't know if we have time, we'll try to get to a little bit of resume, CV writing, and question and answer. So that's kind of the layout. Should we go with the...
Tell us who you are.
Yeah.
First name is fine, and just whether or not you're interested in going into an academic position, either part or full time, or whether or not you're an academic who wants to look into some kind of practice engagement. Let's start in the back there. You look like you've been doing this for a very long time. So.
I'm Nicole. I'm a freshman at Malefyt University.
Oh, I was wrong about that.
So I honestly don't know what I want to do yet, but I'm learning a lot today.
Okay, great. Great.
And then what do you have just next?
I'm in a very similar to Nicole, ironically at University. I'm also a freshman. I mean, I'm not really sure, but like as I get into it, I imagine I would want to be on like more practical side of things, so probably in the industry.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tess. I'm really more towards the industry, but I'm a dual major in both anthropology and environmental studies, so I'd like to use both of them together.
Okay.
You guys who just walked in, we're going to call on you. So just a quick introduction of who you are. Are you leaning more towards looking for a career in academia or in industry? And any thoughts that you have coming into this?
Well, I'm finishing my PhD in anthropology at Yale. And I've mixed experiences about being an academia. So what it's going to be like in the future. Not just on the like so far. So I think I'm trying to think about exploring all possible options. I don't necessarily see that there is a big divide between the two, and that people can I'd like to be part of that overlap.
Nice.
Hi, my name is Michelle Pager. I'm a medical anthropologist with the summer education at University of Connecticut. I'm a registered nurse and currently working in medical device and also hospital administration. So I'm probably going to be doing a little bit of this. So we'll see.
Pat?
Hi, Tricia. Master's in anthropology from Columbia. 20 years in applied anthropology in financial services, IT. Now an adjunct professor at NYU with my own consulting business. And like being ambidextrous.
Yulia?
I'm Yulia. Right now, I'm an assistant professor at Drew University. I'm going to teach anthropology and marketing, so I'm actually kind of strongly we're exploring here. I've also worked in advertising and consulting before and after academia, so it's an idea that I've always been part of in different complicated ways.
My name is Samantha Fox, and I'm an assistant professor of anthropology at Lehigh. Anthropology students from Lehigh here. And I've also worked in urban planning and policy.
Here we go.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Catherine Sparrow. I'm finishing my bachelor's in global business. I just finished up an internship with the U.S. Department of Commerce and headed to background to do external communications. So I'd like to stay in industry, but maybe like touch into academia and like how it's like the toxic zone essentially mentioned.
I'm Preston. I'm a junior at Lemoyne College, and right now I'm kind of like in between, like engaging in academia and like practicing. So I'm still kind of conflicted with it.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley. I'm a rising senior at Hofstra University. I'm leaning more towards academia as I have a fellowship in teaching lined up this summer, but I definitely want to explore industry, especially after autumn's workshop. This autumn's workshop. So yeah, I'm very excited.
I am Stanislao. I am a PhD student at the university, and I am exploring both academic and
Hi everyone, I'm Autumn. I have 27 years of research experience in industry. And I've been so fortunate this past year. I've been guest lecturing, I've taught a graduate seminar, and I want to be ambidextrous like that.
Hi everyone, I'm Jackie. I am currently applying for my grad programs for fall of next year in forensic anthropology. And I do want to stay in academia, but I also want to go into the industry in more of the radio podcasting to bring some crossover from anthropology into the field, so we can start breaking down these walls of constricted nature and biases.
Nice.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah. I'm a senior in my undergraduate at the University of Delaware. I would like to go into industry. Right now I'm working as a correspondent for an online nonprofit publication. And I'm looking to move into a policy analyst job.
Thank you.
I'm Daniel. I was a public high school teacher, then I got my PhD in linguistics. Now I work in nonprofit management. And the nonprofit work that I do involves a lot of informal, non-formal education around like working with interns and museum exhibition design curation. And I've also been able to do a little bit of adjunct teaching on the side. But I'd like to figure out how to fit more of that in.
Hi, I'm Dr. Alma Lindbergh. Have been an anthropologist for a bit, Columbia University Masters, and I just got my PhD in psychology 2 years ago. I've been in the industry, looking at academics, guest lecturing and adjunct with an internship. My client is publicists out on the West Coast, and they are anthropologists in the Insight department, and said, "Hey, you're in Midtown. Come go to this thing. We're all jealous you live on the East Coast." So I saw that you guys are presenting, and here I am. So I want to know what students are doing, and maybe get some people who might be interested in working.
Wow, there you go, guys.
Two more, or maybe some people.
And we go in the back, yeah.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I recently retired from a career as a laboratory technologist and quality and compliance specialist at Cleveland Clinic in the blood bank. And went back, and I'm now a PhD student at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland.
Nice.
And so I'm sort of looking at how do I take my original undergraduate interest in anthropology, now my PhD roots, and go back and use 30 years of experience as in industry and do something anthropologically useful for that industry. We'll see where it goes.
Very nice.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a first year PhD student at Teachers College, Columbia University. And we have a very heavy emphasis on applied anthropology in our program. So I have always envisioned myself going into academia, but I want to keep my options open, so.
Very good. And we had some people in the back come in. Yes.
Hi, I'm Katz. I'm fourth year PhD student at Yale. Studying biological anthropology. My undergrad degree is also in anthropology. And I'm just interested in keeping my options open. I'm mostly focusing on academia, but. Hey, moving on. I'm from Montclair State University. I'm an undergrad, I'm a senior. And kind of still figuring out whether it needs to be policy at the leading at but not still so.
Hi, my name is Serena from Waal College. I'm interested in both academia and in industry. I also would like to do my master's and PhD open to learning.
We already spoke. Yes.
You get everybody? I think so.
All these people in liminality.
Yeah.
In between. Love it.
Right in between.
Yeah.
Victor Turner's over there in the corner.
I guess we can go to the next slide, right?
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts, aside from the fact that we've used up most of the time already. We're going to go through slides, and these things are going to be available. We're not going to spend a lot of time going through them because they'll be available. But we're using the stimuli to get you thinking, and we'd like you, since this is a workshop, to workshop maybe how you might be thinking about this. We also want to offer an opportunity at this moment to see if you have any general questions about where you're going, what we're going to be doing today, anything on your minds. We can uncover that.
Or as we're going, maybe ideas come up. Yeah, just jump out. Yes.
I would say I could just think of one that popped in my head. It's very mysterious, the transition between being an academic undergrad into like getting an internship, a fellowship, or a job immediately after graduating. So whether that be going straight into master's or getting a job or something like that, like how, I know there's no definite like step-by-step guidelines, but like how would you guys advise or like recommend transitioning from undergrad to the workforce or like the work industry in general? A loaded question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a good, I'll take a crack at it.
Go ahead.
You know, in MBA programs, I teach in an MBA program, and you can't be in that program. I'm not sure how it works at Fordham, but you can't be in an MBA program at Columbia Business School unless you've had work experience. So you have to have some idea of what business is like before you get a degree in business. When I was younger, I majored in anthropology, graduated in May, I guess, and then in September I went on to a PhD program, and then spent the next 6 years getting my PhD. So I didn't have anything other than 10 years of education. I can see why someone might want to do that. I think if I had it to do over again, it might be one thing that I might change a little bit. I might have spent a little time in the real world between my undergraduate and my graduate degree as candidate. So it's really up to you. It can be valuable to get a little bit of work experience so that you have an idea of what it's like, and also whether or not you might want to become, say, an academic, or whether or not you want to be in the work with you, which area, and begin to get a feel for that as you start to choose where you might go on to schooling and what kind of schooling that would be.
Yeah, you know, here at Fordham, so we have, we had a big marketing meeting, and most of our students, I was surprised to this, about a third of them go into advertising or marketing here. You know, of course, we're in the advertising mecca of the world in New York City. And many of the students go from undergrad into advertising and are there for a few years and then decide what to do. You know, as Bob said, most of the master's programs or MBAs or PhD programs require some experience. So it's great for you if you can go out after you've finished your undergrad degree, you get some hands-on experience, try that out. I'm going to pick on Yulia here. She did that in reverse. She was at BBDO. We both worked at BBDO. And she was there, a planner 5, 6, 7 years, and then dove into graduate work at Columbia. So, but the work experience, so valuable for you, and we're going to be talking about that now. How you can look at anthropological skills, how that goes in. Yes.
Can I just ask a question? Because I think I heard you a word in your question, and I think I heard you ask how do you go about that transition from undergrad into the working world. Is that part of your question?
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that because that's a bigger question in some ways. It's also more tactical. Tim and I in advertising learned to think first strategically and then tactically. And so this is the strategies that are like, well, what am I thinking about here in terms of a career? And then the tactical part of it is, so how do I do it? By the way, Autumn's a great example of someone who worked for a while and then about 2 decades or so later decided she was going to get a master's degree in anthropology. And there are a lot of people here that got their degrees quite a while after they'd had some work experience.
Let's jump in.
Yeah.
We'll go right into this.
So this is for those of you who are practitioners, who are thinking maybe you'd like to work on the academic side. Tim and I we got our degrees and so on, spent a little time in academia, but then we went into practice, and we're doing that for quite a while before we started teaching. So these are some things that we've learned along the way. And I'll speak, he'll speak. We rehearsed this a little bit, but not totally. So it's really good to engage in guest lectures. Try to get invited, if you can, if you know someone, to go into a classroom and try to give a talk. And talk about something you know and that you've experienced, maybe some of your own work. Students love that. But guest lectures are a really good way to engage with students. And if you haven't done it in a while, we'll rekindle some hopefully fond memories. But if you've never done it, it's really good to get that
And
experience.
faculty are always looking for guest lecturers, so that's a real in. To have somebody come into your class and talk about something, it doesn't have to be a big deal. You can just come in as a guest lecturer for a class. So you get that experience that kind of builds in, and you put that on your resume. It's a nice way to build that in.
It's a good idea to try to identify a faculty member or two in a particular department that you're interested in working, so that you can find out what the department needs are, maybe the style of teaching, and you can learn a lot just by having a lunch or a drink or whatever it might be. Maybe just the office. You don't want to put too much pressure on them. But I can tell you that I actually met with a new chairman of my department, and he and I dreamed up a course together over lunch. And now we're teaching it for the fifth year. So that kind of stuff can really happen, and it can really enrich your experience. Another thing that relates to this is knowing the department that you want to try out for. Some departments, for example, at Fordham or Columbia's anthropology departments, they're not particularly interested in business anthropology. So that would not be a place to go to try to teach it. But the business schools might be more receptive to it. And so you might be in the communications department, or you might be in some kind of hybrid department, as Julia said, that's inventing this. So there are a lot of opportunities to look around in your local area at possible institutions to figure out what departments, it's not always obvious what department you should even be in. So it takes some research.
And as Bob said, there are very topical things, like in business schools now, data analytics is really big. Data marketing, how we understand the digital consumer, social media marketing. And if you don't know data analytics, what I've done, and we'll actually build courses here, is how qualitative research can enhance data analytics. So you're giving a connection, you're creating a synergy that people may not even know about. So you talk about how data analytics often can reveal the numbers of when, where, how much people are doing something. But often it lacks that question of why people are up to something. So that's where the story that anthropologists can get from ethnographic data, even if it's a small sample. Patricia Wang gives a really good discussion of that on a TED Talk. She talks about, what is that?
Nokia. Is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah, IKEA, the power of she calls it thick data. You supplement, you complement. You're not trying to displace it and say this is better than analytic data, because analytic data is going to be here. But you can talk about how you can complement and supplement it and enhance, get a fuller picture through the storytelling. That's a really nice end to making a talk.
One of the things that I know I discovered very quickly is that in business, there's a lot of BS. you can fake your way through a lot of things. I think that's less true of academia. So if you have a course in mind, make sure you think it through fully, because you're going to be sitting down with someone who may be interviewing you, and they're going to really want to know what syllabus. They're not going to ask you to present the syllabus in an interview for the first time, but you really want to know throughout the course of, throughout the whole course, maybe 12 weeks, with a lot of sessions, what you would cover, what kinds of books you would include, or articles. So you want to have your act together fully before you go. And that's just simple preparation, but I think it's really important because I know in business, sometimes you can fake it a little bit. I don't think so much in academia. And the same thing goes along the lines of your expertise. Don't oversell, don't undersell either. We all have incredible skills and we all have incredible experience. And so you want to really make sure that you communicate that in a way. One of the things I know worked for me the first time I ever sat down for a possible guest lecture at Columbia, which was in 2012, was when I started telling some, basically giving little case histories. And I'm watching the eyes of the person who's interviewing me. And I could see that there were some that she was really interested in and some that she was less interested in. So right away, I spent much more time on the one she was more interested in. And she was excited enough about to say, you should talk about that. And she didn't say, you should talk about that. And so that's part of it too, making sure, it's a little bit like a stand-up comedian trying a lot of different jokes.
Right.
You want to get to the right ones. So you may have to get your type 10 worked out beforehand so you really know which cases work.
Right, that's.
You want me to do this or you want to do it?
So, know how teaching is done. This is something that I had to find out coming from industry. So before to my, I was also an adjunct at Parsons School of Design. I was there for a while, just one class a semester taught. But I wanted to know how teaching was done in the department. It was very different. Fordham is a Catholic school, a little more formal. Parsons was very informal. Everyone called me, hi, Tim, students, it's just a very different dynamic there. So the culture, each school, each department has its own culture, get to know how teaching is done. And then how, is versus case, as Bob was kind of alluding to, you can have case study examples, context background, problem, research projects. These are different kind of methodologies in the way courses are taught. Experiential learning show that fieldwork is desirable. How, again, you can enhance what I always say how data analytics is valuable. Let's try to enrich it with some experimental learning and stories behind that. And then this is really key. You would discover similar faculty interest in publications, design studies, sensory studies, and look at their research and find stuff that you can align with, know it, and then come in. We just went through a round of interviews for hiring and 2 more clinical professors, and it's interesting that I was on a hiring committee, and so you get to know, they get to know you. It's nice. They understand your work and they make connections. That makes a big difference. So likewise, the way you can make a connection and understand similar interest and identify with that is going to be very helpful.
The other thing is when you research a department, you can learn a lot about opportunities for yourself that may surprise you. So, for example, in business schools, the amount of time spent on qualitative market research is very small. They think of it as maybe, an hour on focus groups and maybe about 3 minutes on ethnography. And that's about as far as it goes. And of course, there's an article, Yes, Virginia, we teach ethnography in business schools. It was a short thing, it was published by Ethic a number of years ago by a business school professor. The truth is that there's a huge opportunity for people with anthropological training to be able to supplement either by co-teaching or by teaching a course on qualitative methods that might shock you. And a lot of business schools are more receptive to that than you think, because the faculty not only don't want to teach it, but as one faculty member, this is a very interesting comment, I don't know if I told you about this, but the faculty member, I was asking them something about teaching qualitative, and I said, why doesn't anybody teach? Because we're not good at it. Now, these are people who can put mathematical formulas on this whiteboard that stretch from here to 3 rooms down. They're really smart, but they don't know how to do quality. They don't have a feel for quality. So that's why they don't spend much time teaching it. And the students often think that qualitative, this is really the service to the students. They think qualitative is really easy. Just sit down with somebody and have a conversation. There's no real methodology. Certainly no theory. And so this is a real opportunity. I don't want to get too heavy on the theory in the initial conversation for a new job, but at least in business school. But in this case, the more you learn about the opportunities in that, it doesn't have to be business school, whatever school it might be, department it might be, you'll learn that there are possibilities for you to contribute. And I think that would really be an opportunity for you to get a job.
And with, the textbooks and their visit a class in progress, that's great to watch.
Yeah.
Somebody else is teaching. And they're flattered with, and you can come in and watch, you're just watch one of their classes. So certainly ask about that.
Yeah. One other thing I just wanted to mention is that, there are different ways of teaching part-time. Some of you might want to teach part-time. Some of you may want to teach full-time. Full-time jobs, of course, are hard to get, depending on where you want to go. Think really hard about whether or not you have a likelihood of tenure and so on. And we're not going to try to address that here. But I do want to say about part-time jobs that you can be a one-off adjunct where you go and you teach your course. That's it. You're done. I made up my mind early. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to engage more with the department. So what happened is I started getting to know faculty members, and then some of them I wrote articles with, and I've done other projects with, and co-taught with. And I would say for some of you who want a little bit more than just these, courses where you're in and out, this kind of awful adjunct experience. If you want that, fine. You can start that way, or maybe you'll stay that way. But if you want something more, you can engage more and feel more like a member of the department. And especially if you have an anthropology degree, in some of these departments, you're the only one. You're the only anthropologist in that department, and maybe even in the entire school. I don't mean the entire university, but I'm the only anthropologist in the university. That's shocking to think about. And I'm not full-time. And you're the only anthropologist at Fordham Business School.
Yeah. And I'm full-time, so.
Yeah.
All right.
So I just mentioned this one.
Action steps to take. Yes, full-time offer teaching demonstration. Yes, that's great. We've had this. So this is really popular via Zoom. You can just do this. So offer a mock class, and they can evaluate you. We actually evaluated one of the faculty members by having them teach a mock class. But that the professor who was applying for this position had studied what the role was, what the job description was, and what the class description was. So did a really good job of developing a kind of a mock class and showing competency, creativity, and engagement. That was nice. Yeah, we talked about this, using this as a supplement to quantitative research. That is just really key. So again, many business schools stress data analytics and show how this fulfills and really builds out what your data analytics can show, the quantitative work. Any projects that you've had? I did a project a couple of years ago with Revelin, and we had I worked with another faculty here. This was quantitative and qualitative. So I love to give these examples of where we've used quantitative research to survey 750 respondents, but then we did very in-depth qualitative research and really built out a really wonderful story about that. So how they complement one another. You want to take this?
Sure. So this is a thorny question for a lot of people in anthropology who have expertise in anthropology that work in business because ethnography has been so commodified. So ethnography is just going out, watching people, and writing it up. And that's it. Maybe there's an insight. It should be an insight. But it's not necessarily particularly profound. Not close to the level that an academic anthropologist would consider, but also not even close to the level that businesses really need because they're in such trauma and trying to succeed. So this could be on the consumer side, which we have an expertise in, but it could be on the organizational side or any other part of business that you're looking at. So the ways that I think I could say from the experience that Tim and I have had, and this is moving in the other direction. If you are an academic anthropologist, you need to do your homework on the business and the industry. So you need to understand the company, you need to understand the company's language. Daniel, I think you've talked a little bit about this as a linguist. I think I heard you say it somewhere, maybe it was in passing. But we all know that we don't just have to know what KPIs are, key performance indicators, or a lot of those other very obnoxious phrases. and acronyms. But you need to understand what the company is about from a business perspective, what they want and need, so that you can help them meet that need. And when I say company, I don't necessarily mean a commercial corporation. For example, you're not looking necessarily at a commercial corporation, but you do have to do that rather than going in. I would say do it in advance. And then you need to be able to define where or how you can help. And I would say the more you do this before your first meeting, the more you can find out, the better. If you're going to a meeting where you're going to learn about them for the first time, you shouldn't really be learning about them for the first time. That's my view. They think you're learning about them for the first time, but you can ask much better questions if you know a little bit more. Certainly, a lot of companies will be hiring you or interested in you because you know how to do this thing they think is ethnography. And so you don't want to insult them. It's a little bit like this domino idea that Julian Ted was talking about, by just using them with what they think ethnography is and telling you they're a bunch of knuckleheads, and what you can bring is at a much higher level. You want to listen. You'll be doing some observation, just like a good anthropologist, and you'll be asking a lot of good questions, and then figuring out where ethnography might be appropriate if that's what they need, or at least if that's what they want. But then in conversations with them, you may be going further to help them discover that maybe they have some questions they haven't thought about that you can help them answer. So you want
Yeah, I was just going to say in some of the, like how method and theory can be applied, what anthropologists can bring is really rich in studying American culture. So we can talk about rituals and go back to look at Victor Turner and rites of passage and Van these are really good. The stages in breaking lineality and reintegration. Those are really powerful. You can use again and again in looking at communities or looking at identity formation, how people get a sense of identity and how they're going through life in different events and stages in life. Identity is really critical to them. Material culture studies are really powerful, looking at a lot of Danny Miller's stuff in shopping and the value of people using objects to shop, not just to buy for themselves. It's not about consumption, consumption, but it's about building relationships. It's how we show we care for other people by buying things for other people. It's really, really rich, and that's very valuable. And clients light up with that stuff. So there's a lot of value that anthropologists can bring in showing these theories applied to projects and things that you observe and talking about that. So you can even bring that up in a conversation and you say, wow, we have a client that's working on so-and-so, and he could use some of these insights. So
yeah, what I would say is it's a little bit like applying for the academic job and getting that type 10. In other words, have a couple little cases that you can reference that bring in theory in a not too heavy way that illustrate it. So, for example, if I were trying to find in a relevant category. So if I were talking to someone in the food category, I might talk about a project that I think probably heard me talk about too many times, but I always liked it because it enabled my company to get a lot more business from Post Cereal company than we could possibly have dreamed of. And it was a study on breakfast. And the interesting thing about it, for me, was that if you just did ethnographies of breakfast, you go hang out, you watch people. Susan, in a way like what Susan Squires did when she was working on Gogurt, she did some observations and came up with some really interesting insights. If you don't know about that work, it's been written up in a number of popular places. I think there was a Time magazine article on it. Just think of Gogurt. Gogurt is a banana. I don't give too much away. So I would talk about, again, I'm in the food category, and I would say, I'm saying a study on breakfast, and it occurred to me that breakfast is a little bit like a rite of passage. Now, I wouldn't bring up Angela because I thought, so it would be a little too much. But I would talk about how there's a movement, a transition from a very personal space, maybe a sleeping state, but a personal state, into maybe another state where you're with other people, where you're certainly having a very different kind of sensory experience, where you're taking a certain brand of cereal, in this case, Honey Bunches of Oats, which always has a laugh, and how that transforms someone, especially if they're particularly mindful of the eating experience, which some people are, especially if they've had a little caffeine in it. And then they move into another phase, which is very often a public phase. So it's not exactly like a typical ritual of transformation, where there's a separation and, it's some kind of transformational moment, and there's a re-entry in a different status. But in a sense, there's a little bit of a different status when you think about it, because there's the you that you are when you first wake up in the morning, and the way you look and the way you feel, to what this cereal can do for you in terms of making you just feel like you're ready to conquer the world, and you feel really good about the brain because of that, and moving into your public sphere. And so I could tell that story, and I could watch the eyes of the person I'm speaking to. And very often they would say, oh, I never thought about cereal that way. And I would look at the implications of it and why this idea. But the point of it is that you're telling a story that brings in a little bit of theory, just enough. I didn't talk about liminality either. I talked about the limited space with the insight director that hired my company for that project, because she hired my company because she wanted this anthropological perspective. But if I'm telling the story to a new prospect, someone that I want to get business from, I probably won't use liminality unless the person said, by the way, I was an undergraduate major back in 1989. I always liked that. That's why I'm talking to you. Then I would probably throw in a little bit of that. So these are the kinds of things where it is a little bit like that domino idea. It's not trying to bowl them over with how smart you are. One of the things you should know is that the box that you're smart is checked when you're in the room with someone. I'm considering hiring you as an anthropologist. You have either a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a PhD. You don't have to convince them that you really know your stuff. What you need to convince them of, I'm talking about the industry, is that your stuff can be applied to their business problem, because that's really what they care about. And it can be applied to their business problem in a way they never would have imagined. And it's kind of a reframing that Kelly Sunderland had been talking about this morning when we were in that session.
Yeah, and then I'll just throw in a quick case in that clients love it when, as I like what Jillian said this morning about, how the domino effect, how you can put something in their framework and then you kind of take them along with it. And, it's always great in business to start with business questions, business challenges, and then you can go to the human challenge, the human problem, which is what anthropologists study. And so, Art of Shaving was a great example of a high-end brand, a luxury brand that Gillette bought. And it's just a great story where you had a really high, expensive shaving product that kind of defied the category. And right away you start off with that. So most men in America hate shaving. It's a chore that they do, and Gillette knows this. Gillette had just bought this. So Gillette's advertising emphasizes the fact that you don't do anything, the Gillette blade does all the work. Agency is in the blade. It has 5 blades, it pivots, it turns, it does all these marvelous things that you don't have to do. Well, the Art of Shaving kind of defied on it, because the men that would buy this kit, an expensive kit, would spend a lot of time shaving. They would put on music, they would build up this ritual. So when we went to study this, we said, it is a ritual, something that these men enjoy doing. It's part of what they see as a transformation of themselves to get ready for the day, to become more powerful men in the workplace. They saw the workplace as a place of competition where they wanted to get ahead. So they want to be the best with the best. And this shaving kit allowed them to transform in their time. It was very ritualistic. You had 4 steps to make the step. Pre-lather, shave, post-lather, put lotion on, and men would embellish this. So when we talked about this in this ritual framework as something that prepared men to be different selves, that was a very key insight that was helpful for the client. So yes, you can take anthropological theories and use them and kind of make them simplified, in other words. As Jillian said, kind of black and white, right? Not getting into the gray areas, but enough that it's, wow, this shows the difference, and this is something that we can use for other studies.
So, and the last point here before we have to do a little collective thinking. You can't tell too many stories. 1 to 2, that's it. You should be armed with 3, because one of them starts to fall flat, the person looks like they're not getting it, you just kind of move on quickly. But some of you may have experience, even as undergraduates, in a project that you did. you could talk about that and your enthusiasm will come through. If you're a professional and you've done this before, try to pick something and get it down to a way that people really understand it. You know, Daniel is the kind of person who's done a lot of great work on combining qual and quant. And so, but boiling that down to a really good story, what was the net of all of that learning? You know, here's what you did, but then here's the net of it and how it maybe made a difference. It's a really great story to be able to tell. So anything that you have. The other possibility for those of you who are saying, I've never done any of this. There's a lot of literature out there. There are several people in this room who have published on these kinds of things. And you can look it up. You can also email us if you want some references. You can go to Epic, which is a great place for perspectives and cases that it's $150 a year to join. And there's so much, there's short articles, they're not overly academic. At businessanthro.com, which is a website that Tim and I created.
That's free. So
that's free. That's free, right?
And the resources there.
So there are a lot of good resources to get to case studies. The Journal of Business Anthropology has a lot of really good cases. And they're not necessarily written the way business school cases are. They're written more the way an anthropologist might write a case. But so you can use those. And you can say, you don't have to pretend that you did it. But you know, someone like Autumn probably has more cases than she can think of, but she can draw from. So when she's picking, he's going to tell them, you know, whatever you think is going to work for the situation. But for some of you,
a lot of stories.
yeah. So, and we know that people love storytelling. You know, your mind's large and they're interested, and that's the way you're going to convince them to potentially give you a shot at a job. That plus getting your price right, but that's a different situation.
So can you guys, and we're kind of tight on time here. Do you want to get into what do we have? Group two?
Yeah, two types, maybe three people. People who are, if you're an academic who is thinking about becoming a practitioner or not sure, you don't know what you want to do. Group, maybe you two. And then maybe the three of you, maybe there are others. Maybe three of you get together, and then for those of you who are thinking of going the other way, that you're a practitioner who would like to do something more on the academic side. If you can, how about this? Why don't we, if you're an academic who is thinking of becoming a practitioner, raise your hand.
If you're a grad student, you are an academic.
Okay, so if you spot somebody to sit with, it's okay if you're an undergraduate, don't worry about it.
And groups of 2 or 3, if you can.
Just spot, just keep your hand up for a moment and then spot somebody who you can sit with. Okay, you sit together. It's not a test. And then for the others who are practitioners who want to go to the academic side.
Work against it.
If you're not sure, it's in the middle and you think you can contribute, so here's your assignment. Here's your assignment. Based on what we said. Based on what we said. Based on what we said. You're in a meeting with someone. Whatever you want to try out for as a practitioner. What's your pick?
So you want to be hired by an academic institution, or you want to be hired by industry? So you can turn it either way. Phrase it either way.
Whether you have a pitch based on what we talked about. This is just a stimulating conversation. It's to try out a thing. So you might.
Then we want to get. Oh, great. No. You know, I always get ideas when we're talking to them.
I know, me too. It's like what I was saying about, I was listening this morning and I thought, you know, the difference between, we did before her. Before her. And I wrote down.
It's good to them.
Yeah, it was. She was a little different than I've heard. So I thought, the difference between the source and unit state.
Saw it.
To me,
It's
that's
nice.
the way of framing our really. Because everybody was saying,
Oh, I know. But I you know, realize. Stop. Yeah. Just finishing it. Right on. Likes it. So that we can just talk a little bit before we break. At 3:25. We'll begin our presentation. Good block. Right, so who's ready to go first? I'm just handing that, I guess, pointing, you mind?
I was just talking about, I'm looking to go into like a policy-ish field, that's my other major. Interpreting, analyzing policy beyond what public policy majors.
Yeah, a little example of what you might offer.
You could talk about like local communities, if you're trying to do policy that affects local or minority communities, you could talk about kind of the historical placement within that area, rather than just like their coolest nature, study from far.
Yeah, just coming from an anthropological perspective, like, which would be different completely, because we're taught to look at the community as a whole, versus most things are individual.
So that's great, but keep in mind when we're talking about a case, or at least something that's very specific. Because holism is, by the way, a great phrase. You have to make sure people understand. But the more specific the example, the more impressive you'll be, because the person will say, "Oh, I get it," as opposed to this person just let me confused. I don't, you know. Anthropological perspectives sound really good, but people usually will, you know, they can walk away from it. I don't know what she's talking about. So specificity, I would say.
And I know there's, the American Association of Science, there's a lot of anthropologists who work for the federal government, either in policy work or even market administration. They're really open to getting emails.
Great.
So if you look that up, that's really helpful. For some people, it's after their PhD that they apply for it, or even some people who are even tenured that are transitioning out of it.
Yeah, and that's what you described the most successful piece of work. Yeah.
Another great resource for federal government is the Washington Association of Professional Anthropologists. WAPADP.org. And so that's a long-standing local professional organization of anthropologists. Up until COVID, it was really bounded to DC, Maryland, Virginia, and metro area. But now they've sort of, everyone's on Zoom and the world is your oyster. But like the past president of WAPA is an anthropologist who works at the government accountability office.
And one of their board members is here, Victoria Danner. She's light skinned African American and a black girl. She's on the board and she's here with us today.
Anybody else want to?
Autumn and Daniel, you guys want to go?
So I can't pronounce it. What was that hybrid that you came up with the 3 points?
Business anthropology for artists.
Yeah, but you made it into a shorter word. That was so cool. I love
It was a business anthropology.
Anyway, he was just helping me think about the integration because as Bob knows, I'm being considered for a teaching position right now that was just kind of fell in my lap. And it's in a fine arts school,
Nice.
actually, and it would be teaching business in a fine arts school at a university. And so Daniel was helping me think about the intersections of my own identity as an anthropologist and how that would be an asset for
Yeah,
students
I'm
and faculty.
gonna talk to you because I taught commercial school design.
Yes, I would love to visit a university.
Design schools were really big.
I love to pick your brain. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
we have a county here at the university.
Well, for those who are thinking of trying to do more practitioner work in industry, just wanted to offer something that has worked for me a lot. And I know both of you work in industries where you are persuading people to buy
Advertising.
advertising, right? And that's the
Worst.
opportunistic
Yeah.
environment where you are giving people options to pursue their dreams and be happy, right?
That's
So,
what I think.
right, so I come from the other side of compliance and risk analysis. And the thing I found the most effective in getting a work is to say to people, if you don't hire me, you are going to be blindsided by risks from stakeholders you don't know about. And as anthropologists, we reach out to a much wider community of stakeholders than, people who are usual suspects, their own social networks. And I think probably everybody in this room who's done ethnography can come up with 3 stories of situations where you as an anthropologist saw something that was going to happen or something that was going on in the community that was not obvious to some of
That's
us.
true.
So I found that that's a really.
What you don't know could hurt you.
Right.
It's a general question for this one. You also have experience with there. What do you say when you're interviewing for a position and you're told, thank you, we already do that. We already do ethnography, meaning we already have some function filled, we have somebody with a observing. How do you explain that your particular set of expertise for doing additional value?
I know what I would say.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say, not the way I do it. And I think it has to be not humorous, it's the confidence. Obviously, you have to have done your homework. If they hired Tim, you would do it differently than the way I do it, which is actually somewhat valuable. You have 10 anthropologists looking at something, you're going to have these 20 different things. Right?
No, I mean, usually it's in reference to somebody who's not trained.
Right,
well in
and
the-
so my feeling would be with a smile, of course, you always want to be smiling, but I would just say not the way I do it, because I have training and experience that brings ethnography to a level that will certainly surprise you and could really move your business in directions that you wouldn't otherwise.
It's also bringing this theory, because what is observations without theory? It's just simply observation. Anyone can go in and observe, but it's a matter of how does ritual structure, how does it relate to different things you're seeing, how does it relate to identity formation? So you have an arsenal of theoretical constructs that you can tap into that enrich and gives them then chances to make future predictions and build on that, so that it's much stronger than just observation. Anyone can observe.
I want to give you an example. I'm going to steal from something that Tim did. I like it. And I've taught it many times. The difference between, say, the ethnography, if you're looking, let's say you're studying the work very hard, let's say cattle. You can do an ethnography, by driving to something, you can see what's like that in a car and have a look at how furious it is and how colorful it is, and how, feel when they drive it. That's basic ethnography. What if you couple that with something larger, like the American success model, right, Jim? He wrote about this, and it takes it to another level of understanding about profound consequences for how you sell a car. And that's a study that I think is fabulous because
Well, that was studying we did with Cadillac. So Cadillac is a good car. They built new cars, but Cadillac is not as high quality cars as Mercedes or Lexus, right? It's not as much performance as doesn't have a high performance as a BMW. So what are you going to do to say in branding? It's how you make your product, your brand unique compared to anything else. What's going to stand out about that? You're not as luxurious. You're not as performance. So what we heard, we didn't ask the typical questions of observation. What do you like in a luxury car? What's luxury mean to you? we saw that we got into what's success? What's success in America? What does that mean? How do you achieve success? And people talked about tapping into a bit of the American dream, but especially people who are new to money, it was like when you're successful, you want to celebrate it. You want to show others that you're successful. A statement of about yourself. So what we got, it was interesting. This was back in 2003, and the advertising today is still the same. In the Cadillac, it doesn't talk about performance or luxury or sound, the audio. Cadillacs are vehicles you arrive in. Dignitaries or presidents arrive in a Cadillac. And that sense of arrival is a statement to your community. You know, you're arriving in a community. And that was a positioning idea that Cadillac could talk about. Lexus, BMW could not, because it's really about the American dream of achieving, arriving, and showing it to everyone else. So that was something we got from the research stories. People talked about success in America.
That's anthropology, not just economics. And to me, that illustrates the point. And there are a lot of great examples along those lines that you can find through research, or you can find talking to the right people, but it makes a distinction in a way that you don't want to necessarily disparage the competition for a job or they already have there, but you do want to distinguish yourself. And the way you get hired is by distinguishing yourself. I know we have to break. I just want to point out, we're not going to go through this. These are just some quick pointers. You probably already know this, but some people need to be reminded, because if you're an academic, it's really hard to work you've done. This will be posted, as Tim said, but you need short resumes, and if you're an academic and want to go into academia, you have to make sure that you get your CV right for the appropriate department. And then our contact us information is on the next slide, and along with the description of the session. But, anybody has any questions of us, please let us know. You can hopefully connect further yourselves.
Yes, please do.
We wish you luck in whatever transition and transformation you want to make. But also, I think people are constantly transforming. You're not making a choice for life necessarily. You can go back and forth. You may do it many times.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.